In 1946, Claude Poulan founded a chainsaw company in a 20 by 20 foot shed in Shreveport, Louisiana. By the 1960s and the 1970s, Poulan was the #1 pulpwood chainsaw in the American Southeast. The saws were built to last, running for thousands of hours. Loggers rebuilt them and passed them down. In July 2023, the last major American factory carrying the Poulan name announced it would close, cutting 700 jobs. Today, Poulan sells at Walmart for $45. In 1944, cutting down a tree in East Texas was a 3-man job. 2 men gripped either end of a chainsaw that weighed over 100 pounds. A third stood beside them, holding a pry pole, a long metal rod used to keep the chain from binding as it cut into the tree. 1 cut, 3 men, every single time. Claude Casper Poulan watched that process and knew it was broken. Poulan was born in 1915 in Monroe, Louisiana. In 1944, he was supervising German prisoners cutting pulpwood in East Texas. Pulpwood was the raw timber fed into paper mills. The mills ran constantly, and the demand for cut wood never stopped. But the process of actually cutting it was slow, clumsy, and consumed more labour than any operation could afford. Poulan picked up an old truck fender off the ground. He bent it into a curved shape and attached it to the chainsaw to guide the chain through the cut. He called it the bow guide. It worked. 1 man could now operate the saw alone, without a pry pole and without a second operator. That one piece of bent metal changed everything. In 1946, Poulan took $4,000, rented equipment, and set up operations in a 20-foot by 20-foot shed in Shreveport, Louisiana. He named the company Poulan Chainsaws. In the beginning, he built the saws using engines purchased from other manufacturers. He did not yet have the resources to make everything himself, but he had the design, and the design was selling. By 1951, Poulan Chainsaws was producing its own internally developed engines. The company was no longer assembling parts from other suppliers. It was building everything in-house, from the motor to the chain. Throughout the 1960s and the 1970s, Poulan was the #1 pulpwood saw across the entire Southeast. Logging crews in Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and Arkansas trusted the brand above every competitor. The saws were sandcast, a manufacturing method that produced thick, dense metal housing and designed to be fully overhauled from the trigger to the crankshaft, built to last thousands of hours of continuous use. These were not weekend tools. These were working machines that men depended on to earn a living. In 1959, a businessman named Charles Beaird bought the company, and that is where the story starts to change. Charles Thomas Beaird was born in Shreveport, Louisiana on July 17, 1922. He was not a lumberjack. He was not an engineer. He was a businessman, a decorated Marine Corps pilot who had flown B-25s in the Philippines during World War II and who returned home with a sharp eye for investment opportunity. After the war, Beaird became vice president of the J.B. Beaird Company, a Shreveport steel fabricating business his father had started in 1918. When that company was sold, Beaird needed somewhere to put his capital and his energy. He found it in a small chainsaw manufacturer on the edge of town. In 1959, Charles Beaird purchased the Poulan Chainsaw Company and renamed it Beaird Poulan. What happened next surprised the industry. Beaird had no background in chainsaws, but he understood operations, distribution, and growth. He pushed the company to build better facilities, reach new markets, and expand the product line beyond the logging camps of the Deep South. Under his leadership, Beaird Poulan became the 4th largest chainsaw manufacturer in the world. In 1971, Beaird moved the company into a brand new manufacturing facility on Flournoy Lucas Road in Shreveport. The new plant measured 117,000 square feet, more than double the 54,000 square feet of the old Greenwood Road facility. The company was growing fast and it needed room to grow. Poulan under Beaird was still a Shreveport company. The saws were still built in Louisiana. The culture was still rooted in the American South. But that was about to end. Emerson arrives. Emerson Electric Company was founded in St. Louis, Missouri in 1890. By the early 1970s, it had grown into one of the largest industrial conglomerates in the United States, manufacturing everything from electric motors to defense electronics. It was a Fortune 500 company, and it was always looking for profitable businesses to acquire. In February 1973, James M. Conley Jr. became president of Claude Poulan, replacing Charles Beaird. The following month, Beaird, now chairman, announced that Emerson Electric had acquired the company. Emerson traded stock for Claude Poulan. No cash changed hands. In a single transaction, a Louisiana chainsaw company, founded in a 20 by 20 foot shed, became a division of a $764 million manufacturing empire headquartered in Missouri. Beaird told the press it was a good deal. He said Emerson would provide the financial backing Poulan needed to grow. He was right about the money. What he did not say, what perhaps nobody said out loud, was that Poulan's identity as an independent Southern brand had just ended. Inside a large conglomerate, every division is measured against every other division. Profit margins are tracked quarterly. Underperforming product lines get cut. Costs are consolidated wherever possible. Poulan was now playing by those rules, and those rules had nothing to do with how well a saw cut through pine. The Weed Eater merger. While Emerson was absorbing Poulan, something else was happening in Houston, Texas. George Ballas was a dance studio owner. He had built Dance City, USA into a 43,000 square foot operation with 120 instructors, one of the largest dance studios in the country. But in 1971, it was not dancing that made him famous. That year, Ballas invented the string trimmer. He got the idea while sitting in an automatic car wash, watching the rotating nylon brushes clean the hard-to-reach edges of his car. He went home, punched holes in a popcorn can, threaded fishing line through it, and bolted it to a rotating lawn edger. It worked. He called it the Weed Eater. Before the Weed Eater, trimming grass around trees, fences, and walls meant getting on your knees with a pair of shears. It was slow. It was painful. It was the kind of job that homeowners across America put off for weeks. Ballas founded the Weed Eater Corporation in 1971 in Houston, Texas. Sales went from $570,000 in 1972 to $40 million in 1976. In 1977, he sold the company to Emerson Electric. Emerson now owned two things, a chainsaw company and a string trimmer company. The logical next step, from a corporate perspective, was to combine them. By 1979, Emerson had fully merged Weed Eater into Beaird Poulan, creating the Beaird Poulan Weed Eater division. This merger is the moment Poulan's identity broke. A company built by loggers for loggers was now a lawn and garden brand. Its catalogue now included the tools that suburban homeowners used to tidy up their yards on Saturday mornings. The professional logger, the man who had trusted Poulan for 30 years, was no longer the target customer. The industry collapses. By 1981, the chainsaw boom that had driven Poulan's growth through the 1960s and the 1970s was over. The forests of the American South had been heavily logged. Mechanized felling machines, large tracked vehicles that could cut, delimb and stack a tree in under 60 seconds were replacing handheld saws on commercial logging operations. The market that had built Poulan was shrinking, and it was shrinking fast. In March 1981, the Beaird Poulan Weed Eater division of Emerson Electric laid off 250 employees. The company's vice president for industrial relations stated the cuts were necessary due to declining chainsaw sales that had continued since the prior year. Poulan's two largest competitors, Homelight and McCulloch, made identical cuts at the same time. The Shreveport plant employed approximately 1,000 workers before the layoffs. This was not a Poulan problem. This was an industry problem. But Poulan, now a mid-sized division inside a massive conglomerate, had less protection than it once did. An independent company fights to survive. A division gets restructured. Electrolux buys the brand. Emerson Electric held Poulan for just over a decade before selling it again. Electrolux was a Swedish home appliance company headquartered in Stockholm. It manufactured refrigerators, vacuum cleaners, and washing machines. It had no history in chainsaws. It had no connection to the American South, to logging culture, or to the identity Claude Poulan had built from a bent truck fender in 1944. In 1984, Electrolux purchased Poulan from Emerson Electric. 4 years later, the decision that would permanently sever Poulan from its roots was made. In 1988, Electrolux closed the Shreveport factory, the building where Beaird had doubled the production floor in 1971, the facility that had sat at the center of the American chainsaw industry for more than 4 decades, was shut down. Manufacturing moved to Nashville, Arkansas. The same year the Shreveport factory closed, Electrolux introduced a new brand name for its mid-range chainsaw line. The Poulan Pro name came into being in 1988, with the first models built largely from inherited Pioneer and Partner saw designs. Poulan was now 2 things at once. It was a budget brand for entry-level consumers and a rebranded mid-tier line assembled from another company's blueprints. Neither version was the saw that loggers in Georgia and Louisiana had trusted for 30 years. The Nashville factory would become the largest chainsaw production facility in the world. It would produce over 1 million units a year, and it would take another 35 years before someone finally decided to close that one too. What remained? The name survives, the company does not. In 2022, a company most Americans had never heard of acquired the rights to the Poulan Pro brand. Valsi is a Mexican manufacturing company. That year, Valsi purchased tooling from Husqvarna for manufacturing walk-behind mowers and acquired the rights to manufacture outdoor power equipment under the Poulan Pro brand name. Think about what that means. A brand built by a Louisiana lumberman in 1946, grown into the #1 pulpwood saw in the American Southeast, sold 4 times across 6 decades, and now licensed to a Mexican manufacturer to stamp onto lawn equipment. The Poulan name did not disappear. It was sold one final time to whoever would keep using it. Today, the Poulan brand name covers chainsaws, lawnmowers, and leaf blowers aimed at the mid-level consumer market. Since Poulan is owned by Husqvarna, the 2 brands share technologies. Sharing technologies in practice means that a $45 Poulan and a $400 Husqvarna can trace certain components back to the same corporate family. They are not the same saw. The gap between them in materials, engineering, and expected lifespan is wide. That gap is the distance between what Poulan was and what it became. 4 owners, 4 decisions. To understand how a brand declines, you have to trace each decision point, because no single owner destroyed Poulan. Each one made a rational choice, and the sum of those rational choices produced an irrational result. Claude Poulan built the company from 1946 to 1959. 13 years. During that time, Poulan became the #1 pulpwood saw in the Southeast, with saws built from sand cast metal designed to be completely overhauled and run for thousands of hours. The product was the identity. The identity was the product. Charles Beaird bought the company in 1959 and built it into the 4th largest chainsaw manufacturer in the world. He expanded the facilities, broadened the market, and pushed the brand into hardware stores and farm supply shops beyond the logging industry. This was good for revenue. It also began moving Poulan away from its core customer, the professional logger, toward the casual user. Emerson Electric acquired Beaird Poulan in March 1973. Emerson was a $764 million conglomerate with no roots in the logging industry. Inside Emerson, Poulan was a revenue line. Then, in 1979, Emerson merged the Weed Eater brand into Beaird Poulan, creating the Beaird Poulan Weed Eater division. Poulan was now a lawn and garden company. The chainsaw was still in the catalogue, but it was sharing shelf space with string trimmers. Electrolux purchased Poulan in 1984 and closed the Shreveport factory 4 years later in 1988. 42 years of Louisiana manufacturing gone. And in the same year the factory closed, the Poulan Pro sub-brand was introduced, with its first models built largely from inherited Pioneer and partner saw designs. The professional identity of the brand was replaced with a name that said Pro on the label, but did not carry the manufacturing standards that word implied. Then came Husqvarna in 2006, and Poulan became what it is today. What budget actually costs? There is a version of this story where selling a chainsaw at Walmart for $44.98 is described as democratization, making a tool accessible to people who could not otherwise afford one. That argument deserves a direct answer. A $44.98 chainsaw that fails after 20 hours of use costs more than a $300 chainsaw that runs for 20 years. The consumer who buys the cheap saw buys it again and again. The total cost over a decade of ownership exceeds what a durable tool would have cost at the start. The savings are an illusion built on a short replacement cycle. The components in current Poulan chainsaws are sourced from various domestic and international suppliers and are not the same as those used in higher-end Husqvarna models. That sourcing decision is made at the corporate level, not the factory floor. The engineers who design these saws know exactly what they are building and for whom. They are building a saw for someone who will use it twice a year, store it in a garage, and replace it in 3 years when it stops starting reliably. Users who have tested modern Poulan models extensively report chrome peeling from pistons within an hour of runtime, causing immediate compression failure, with the conclusion that the saw is not worth the cost of repair. When a tool is cheaper to replace than to fix, it becomes disposable. The logger in 1965 who bought a Beaird Poulan 306 expected it to outlast him. The homeowner in 2024 who buys a Poulan at Walmart expects it to outlast the warranty, maybe. These are not the same product, they share a name. That is all. Nashville, Arkansas, the last address. The town of Nashville, Arkansas has a population of approximately 4,100 people. It sits in Howard County, in the southwestern corner of the state, surrounded by timber country, the same landscape that made chainsaw manufacturing a logical industry for this part of America in the first place. The Husqvarna manufacturing campus at 1 Poulan Drive was built in 1976. The main facility spans 299,885 square feet on 101.82 acres. At its peak, the plant produced over 1 million chainsaw units per year and employed hundreds of workers in a community where there were few employers of comparable size. In July 2023, Husqvarna announced the Nashville facility would close by the end of 2024, eliminating approximately 700 jobs. For a town of 4,100 people, 700 jobs is not a statistic. It is the tax base, the hospital revenue, the school enrollment numbers, the lunch traffic at every diner on Main Street. Production was consolidated into facilities in Brazil, China, and Orangeburg, South Carolina. The gasoline-powered chainsaw, the product that built the Poulan brand, that cleared the pulpwood forests of the South, that ran on the same mechanical principles Claude Poulan had refined in a shed in 1946, was being phased out of Husqvarna's long-term strategic plan. Husqvarna had already closed its facilities in DeQueen, Arkansas, and Shreveport, Louisiana in 2017. Nashville was the last one. Phoenix Investors, a Wisconsin-based real estate firm specializing in former manufacturing sites, purchased the Nashville properties in 2024. The address, 1 Poulan Drive, still exists. The factory that once filled it does not. What this story is. Poulan's decline follows a pattern that has repeated across American manufacturing for 50 years. An independent company builds a trusted product. A larger company acquires it for its revenue. A larger company acquires that company for its portfolio. Each new owner is further removed from the original product and the original customer. Each transition introduces a new layer of cost pressure. The product changes to meet the price point. The price point changes to meet the shelf. The brand name is the last thing to go because the name still carries residual trust from the decades when the product earned it. Consumers who remember the old Poulan, or whose fathers used one, reach for the familiar name on the Walmart shelf. They do not know they are buying something built to different standards for a different market by a company headquartered in Stockholm. Claude Poulan was born in 1915 in Monroe, Louisiana. He died in 1995 in San Diego, California. He invented the bow guide in 1944 and founded Poulan Chainsaws in 1946. He built a company from $4,000 and a rented shed into the dominant chainsaw brand in the American South. The Poulan name still exists. It sells at Walmart for $44.98. If this story of American manufacturing is the kind of content you want to see more of, subscribe and leave a like. Only if you think it earned it.